Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. Kali Yuga Dharma Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, welcome. Tonight's session is probably going to be short and sweet. We will see how it goes. But it's going to be about autumn in the wonderful land of Vrindavan. I thought that since autumn is coming upon so many of us, at least in the northern hemisphere, that it would be a great time to speak about this beautiful, most celebrated season in Vrindavan. So of course, we can't enter into that beautiful, most glorious realm without first inaugurating it with the chanting of Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannavalabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannavalabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jannavalabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Radhe Govinda Jaya Radhe Govinda Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai Shri Radha Kunj Bihari Ki Jai. So welcome once again. So good to see all of you. So many of you are my friends and I am missing you, but so glad that we can still find some way to get together, still find some way to encourage each other and spur each other on, even if we are not physically together. One of my good friends told me that whenever we come together to chant or read or glorify our supreme best friend, our best hero, then we are never actually separated from one another. It is in those moments when we are actually associating with one another. Because if we get together in person and we don't utilize our time for speaking anything about our eternal relationship, the strongest, best, most heartfelt relationship that we have, then is it really association? So one of my friends told me a long time ago that any time that we are in kirtan thinking of one another, or in a satsang, in a katha, while reading, while thinking about Krishna, and we are thinking of each other, then that is actually the essence of real association. So I'm so glad to be with all of you, actually, really, truly. And I'm excited to read about the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dhama within the autumn season. I'll be reading from a book called Venu Gita by His Holiness Sivarama Maharaj. Sivarama Maharaj is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada and an initiating guru within ISKCON. And he has made these adaptations of the many verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he has made them into such gloriously beautiful descriptions that they have inspired my own writing. And they've inspired my own mind and heart. Whenever I feel like I have some kind of writer's block, I kind of run to Sivarama Maharaj's books, and I run to Sachinandan Maharaj's writings. And I take shelter of them and my own Guru Maharaj. And they kind of help me get over the slump of writer's block. So when I was thinking about what to read this evening, in these writings are fused the many verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we get to hear those verses also, but we get to hear about them fleshed out and blossomed into a nice, beautiful narrative that I hope that we will all enjoy. It'll make for a really sweet evening or morning, depending upon where you are. The lush forest of Vrindavan is the transcendental stage upon which Sri Krishna, the master performer, accompanied by his eternal retinue, has appeared. Through the narration of that great sage, Krishna's friends, cows, and gopis enact the script of his eternally revolving pastimes for the audience of swan-like devotees. Such is the extraordinary atmosphere of his sports. Having described the autumn, Shukadeva Goswami now cites its special features, which impel Sri Krishna to reveal his impenetrable pastimes. It's so interesting to think of Krishna's pastimes as impenetrable, which means that they're almost impossible to understand unless and until we completely surrender our hearts to Krishna. Once we do that and we open ourselves to Krishna saying, I just want to know you. Can you show me everything that you wish to show me about you? Krishna then in turn begins to reveal his heart and to reveal his nature. So it is through these pastimes that we get to find out about Krishna's impenetrable pastimes, those pastimes which are impossible to jump into unless Krishna himself brings you into them. And all that is necessary is our willingness, our complete dedication and enthusiasm to know him with love and affection. Sanatan Goswami says such impetus is called upakarana. in the mind of Sri Krishna, the all-attractive person, reveling in the association of his loving associates, Vrindavan forest creates an extraordinary enchantment. Therefore, it is known as Manohar, the seducer of Hari's mind. The charm of Vrindavan allures Sri Krishna, for it is the manifestation of his eternal potency and is non-different from him. Gazing upon the display of natural opulence present before him, Sri Krishna marvels at the beauty of his own energies as a child gazes at his reflection. If Sri Krishna, the all-attractive person, is attracted by Vrindavan, then how captivating that place must be for all living entities. It is simply Manohar. When Hari saw the restless eyes of the does grazing nearby, the remembrance of Radharani's glance appeared in his mind. Seeing the tails of the love-intoxicated peahens, Murari remembered the glistening braids of his mother as she labored to bathe him. The warbling of the swans reminded him of the gopis' waist belts in the rasa dance, and the restless honeybees made him think of the tearful eyes of the balaks, unable to accompany him to the forest. Srila Prabhupada says that this is the true meaning of samadhi. Real samadhi means that we are busy, immersed in the service of Krishna, doing something for him, even if that devotional service is calling out to him for his protection and shelter. Sri Krishna within Bhagavad Gita states that those who depend on him do so in devotional service. That dependence on him is a performance of devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada says that this is true samadhi, to be immersed and to be busy, to be active in some kind of loving devotional service toward our supreme hero. Wherever Hari cast his glance, he remembered his associates, the variety of love they feel for him, the mysterious depths of their love, and the supreme happiness they enjoy from it. Thinking in this way, he tasted unlimited joy, for Vrindavan forest had adopted many forms just to give him pleasure. Of the entire realm of beauty displayed for Sri Krishna's pleasure, two factors dominate the mystique of Braj. According to the Acharyas, these are the breezes, or Vayun, and the clear autumnal waters, Swachha Jalam. Lotus flowers bloom out of joy in the rainy season, and the many lakes and rivers of Vrindavan were crowded with flowers of all colors and sizes. There were red kalara, blue indivara, white pundarik, as well as pink, yellow, and multicolored lotuses. Their intoxicating fragrances permeated the air and mixed with the coolness of the lakes. These lotuses are sometimes strung into a garland to decorate the broad chest of Mukunda. At other times, he may hold them in his hands like a toy. I remember hearing the name Mukunda, and I remember hearing the translation being the giver or the bestower of liberation. And I always kind of wondered, why? Because as devotees, hoping to follow in the footsteps of the mood of those who are in Sri Vrindavan Dhama, we look to Krishna as more than just the bestower of liberation. We yearn and we hope and we pray to reach a status, a point where our devotion thinks just of him as our dearest, most beloved. Not someone who's going to give us liberation where we somehow merge into his Brahman effulgence, but a place where we can forever serve him, and unite with him in loving devotional service. So I always thought it interesting that Mukunda, the translation was given as the giver of liberation. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and finally, because I also heard that the gopis would describe Krishna as the giver of liberation as Mukunda. And I thought, that seems a little bit different from the gopis' mood. For the gopis, Krishna is just their most beautiful love, the hero of Vrindavan. He's not a god to bestow liberation. So I kind of wondered how they would call him Mukunda. And finally, I came upon a translation. Mukunda, the kunda flower, is a jasmine flower. Mukunda means one whose face is beautifully bright like a jasmine bud. Mukunda also means one whose smile is decorated with teeth and the teeth look like rows of jasmine buds. And therefore Krishna is called Mukunda. So one of my friends is asking, is devotional service to Krishna considered higher than liberation? Sanatana Goswami states in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita that liberation, Mukti Devi, simply yearns to follow Bhakti Devi, devotional service. Mukti Devi is sometimes rejected and ignored by devotees because devotees are always yearning for devotional service. So according to the Acharyas and the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage, they consider devotional service to be higher than liberation. And so they encourage their disciples to hope not just to be liberated from pangs of material distress, to be liberated from this material condition, but to aspire higher, to raise ourselves and our consciousness to the point of loving, divine devotional service, which is unmotivated, uninterrupted, unlimited, and infallible, just like our Supreme Lord. So it is described that even Mukti Devi follows Bhakti Devi like her most obedient servant and shadow, just hoping for just one speck of her mercy. So this is Mukunda. Mukunda is not just the bestower of liberation, but Mukunda is one whose face is bright like a jasmine bud, whose smile is decorated with teeth that look like delicate jasmine buds. This is our Mukunda. So beautiful to look upon and so enchanting to see. When Krishna sports in the water, his friends hide by swimming among lotus flowers, which become indistinguishable from their own lotus faces. If one boy happens to discover another, they playfully beat each other, holding the stems of lotuses like a club. In addition, there is a rare species of lotus that grows on land and is known as Stala Kamalini. When Sri Krishna, in anticipation of a meeting with the gopis, walks over the Chintamani soil of Braj, under the canopy of a full moonlit night, land lotuses sprout in his wake and spread their unique fragrance only for the duration of that pastime. We find that Sri Vrindavan Dhama will manifest many things only for as long as Krishna needs them. It is said that Sri Vrindavan is 1,000-petaled lotus that can expand and contract for whatever Krishna needs. When Krishna must reach home very quickly in order to avoid being chastised by his mother, the lotus of Sri Vrindavan Dhama contracts and it makes the spaces smaller so that he can rush home very quickly. And when Sri Krishna wishes to spend more time with the gopis, Sri Vrindavan Dham expands so that those who wish to catch him with the gopis cannot do so. So according to Krishna's wishes and desires, the very land of Vrindavan will change. The land will manifest miracles just for the purpose of pleasing Sri Govinda. The king and queen of lotuses must have performed innumerable austerities, on account of which Sri Krishna's eyes, face, smile, hands, feet, and transcendental limbs are the constant object of comparison for great Vaishnava poets. Even the moon, who shines from the pages of many great compositions, falls down in embarrassment in the presence of the lotus. We hear that even Kunti Maharani refers Krishna's appearance to, she compares it to so many beautiful lotuses in her prayers to him. An unlimited variety of aromatic flowers blossoms in the trees of Vrindavan, each a reflection of Sri Krishna's inconceivable artistic skill. Although trees generally blossom in the spring, in the land of wonder which is Vrindavan, the seasonal laws act only for the pleasure of Sri Krishna. There are divine Kadamba, Champak, Shirisha, Ketaki, and Kumshuka trees, along with beautiful Lavanga, Jati, Yuti, and Madhavi vines. They bear flowers of many heavenly colors, and their combined fragrance is carried by a slow, singular breeze. This breeze, pregnant with the weight of an intoxicating fragrance, now moves in lazy patterns, winding among the many trees like an ethereal python, sometimes stopping, sometimes continuing its love-induced course. How wonderful is that description! The breeze continues its love-induced course. Even the very breeze within Vrindavan yearns to serve Sri Krishna in love, with love and devotion. Everything in Vrindavan is sentient. Everything in Vrindavan is feeling. Everything in Vrindavan has consciousness. And that consciousness has one goal and one goal alone: to be used in the pleasure and for the satisfaction of Sri Govinda Dev. Those living entities who gain the fortune of receiving its touch are released from the cycle of birth and death. Aromatic, cooling, and pleasant in every way, it sends an invitation to Sri Krishna. Vrindavan forest is now prepared to receive him. If one asks how such divine fragrances came to be, the answer is that Mother Earth has adopted the scent of Sri Krishna's body at the time of his bath. When Mother Jashoda removes his cloth, allowing it to fall to the ground, the assimilated scent of his limbs, which resembles a mixture of sandalwood pulp, camphor, musk, and aguru, is immediately plundered by Prithvi Devi. She then distributes it to all her associates like the trees, bushes, and flowers, who forward it to their offspring, the flowers. Each flower, according to its qualification, receives some portion of this aroma, which is then known as its own bouquet. So when Krishna says that he is the original fragrance of the earth, the light of the sun and the moon, the original taste of water, this is what we can understand about it. At the time of Sri Krishna's bath, his mother drops his cloth to the floor, and the fragrance from the body of Sri Krishna is taken up greedily by the earth. And she spreads that wealth as mercy, as prasad, to everyone she can. So now all the trees all the flowers, all the vines, and even the breeze of Sri Vrindavan bears the scent and the fragrance of Sri Krishna's own body. When it rains, the water flows along the soil in countless rivulets, absorbing this divine scent and transporting it to the rivers and lakes of Braj. Such reservoirs become the envy of the celestial Ganges, for their fragrance can only be compared to themselves, their taste compared to the nectar of the gods, and their color compared to the reflection in the eyes of Kamala, the goddess of fortune. By autumn, the waters of Vrindavan are clear and transparent, adding untold glory to the unique atmosphere. The blackish Jamuna and the golden Manasi Ganga are celebrated by liberated souls as the liquefied form of rasa. This liquefied form of transcendental mellow, the liquefied form of transcendental love. These rivers happily serve as a playground for the cowherd boys and provide pure drinking water for the cows. The gentle waves of the Manasi Ganga sing mantras unknown to the Vedas as they caress the many stones lining their sacred shores. The happiness and merriment Sri Krishna enjoyed when he frightened the gopis by threatening to submerge their boat have dissolved into Ganga Devi's deep waters and bestow indescribably wonderful benefits. Radha Kund and Shama Kund contain the water of all the sacred rivers. They are the essence of all pilgrimage sites, and their glories are without limit. By offering a ghee lamp to Radha Kund, the performer will see the universe during his bath, and at death will attain eternal residence in Goloka. At Kusham Sarovara, Sri Hari combs and braids Radhika's hair. As his ecstasy overflows, it mixes with the water and enables Narada to easily assume the body of a gopi. At Chandra Sarovar, near Govardhan, Sri Krishna took rest and, dressed in his charming Ras outfit, refreshed himself with the waters of this lake. After King Indra had been humbled and the torrential rains on Vrindavan abated, the demigods performed the Abhishek ceremony of Sri Krishna, and the abundant Charanamrit became known as Govinda Kund. Simply by seeing this lake, one achieves the same merit as performing 100 Ashvamedh Yagyas. In Kamyavan is the delightful Mohini Kund, where Sri Krishna displayed the form of Mohini that had previously bewildered the demons and distributed nectar to the demigods. One who is fortunate enough to see this lake will never become overcome by the illusion of the material nature. Next to Nandeshwar is the lake built by Nanda Maharaj for the pleasure of his little son. It is here that Sri Krishna, invisible to all, would swim underwater to the far shore, embrace his favorite gopi, and return unnoticed. Surrounded by many kadamba trees, this Pavan Sarovar is the ultimate pilgrimage place for Pushkar and the king of all holy places. While enjoying the pastime of eating, Sri Krishna, intoxicated with the association of his friends and the tasty cooking of his mothers, drank the water of Panihari Kund, kissing it with his bimba fruit lips. The favor known only to his flute and the gopis was now bestowed upon this fortunate lake. So, as we can see, everything within Sri Vrindavan Dham has emotion, has consciousness, has feeling. And every single entity is blessed by Sri Krishna. We are hearing how Krishna interacts even with the lakes. As he drinks the water, it touches his lips, and the nectar of his lips is transferred to the lakes. This is a benediction that is usually only bestowed upon the Lord's flute. And the gopis are often jealous of the flute because of that. But now, even the lakes are being given such a benediction. This is the glory of Sri Vrindavan Dhama. The glories of the Jamuna are known only to Sri Krishna and his most intimate associates. At Ujjani, she changes her course, flowing upstream to hear the sweet music of Krishna's flute. Always embracing the delicate body of Govinda, her waters turn blackish with the kajal decorating the gopis' eyes, and reddish by the finely powdered kumkum from their breasts. The fortune of the Jamuna, the happy place of Sri Krishna's pleasure pastimes, is known only by her grace. Although seated side by side, under the influence of their mutual love, Radha and Krishna's feelings of separation reached its pinnacle and caused a shower of tears, which mixed to form the charming Prema Sarovar. This place knows no equal in the 14 worlds and is glorified by other waters of Vrindavan. Let us not forget the many waterfalls on Govardhan Hill, which are especially valued by Sri Krishna as places of unlimited amusement. The Devas say they are the tears of the king of mountains, that greatest of devotees who always witnesses the pastimes of the Prince of Braj. These are but some of the many streams, rivers, ponds, and lakes of Vrindavan, which are all saturated with the loving pastimes of Sri Hari and his associates. The waters are transparent because of their purity and devoid of any taint of material contamination. Their clarity reflects the nature of pure love in Vrindavan, always free of godly veneration, and the giver of the greatest bliss to Sri Krishna. If one lived for a lifetime of Lord Brahma and possessed as many tongues as King Ananta, one would never know even an atomic fraction of their glories. The water within the lakes and rivers of Vrindavan is a soothing nectarian beverage. It is a mixture of rainfall, the scent of Sri Krishna's limbs, and the essential bhav of local pastimes. The trees, creepers, and plants grow luxuriant, nourished by these glorious bodies of water, warmed by the all-compassionate sun, and caressed by the Malayan breezes. The honey produced of their flowers contains the distilled essence of this nectar, and appears as golden tears of ecstasy, flowing from the whorl to the petals, and then slowly down the stem to golden pools. Anything and everything is possible in Vrindavan. The trees are not just green. It is said that some of the trees are bluish. The leaves are bluish. Some of the trees, the leaves are golden colored. Anything and everything is possible within Vrindavan. Although bees naturally become intoxicated by drinking the honey of flowers, the fortune of the bees of Braj is not caused by the diversity of its flora. Because their auspicious diet is the liquid essence of devotional bhavas, Shukadeva Goswami refers to them as Shushmi Bringa. The inebriating nature of this spiritual energy induces them to gather in swarms and perform the congregational chanting of Sri Krishna's pastimes. Surcharged with devotion, they are always absorbed in discussion of topics of pure bhakti. When these bees become intoxicated in transcendental bliss, gorging themselves on their nectar fare, they fly erratically here and there in search of the object of their devotion. That object is Madhupati. I've heard that the sound of the buzzing of the bees of Sri Goloka Vrindavan can also be compared to the beautiful sound of when devotees come together to chant japa, to perform mantra meditation together. It is also said that this is like the beautiful sound of the bees in Goloka Vrindavan, the bees of the spiritual world who know only Madhupati, Sri Krishna, as their Lord and Master. So the next time we are assembled with other devotees, and we are all listening to the chanting of the holy name, if we are so fortunate to be in a japa assembly, we can remember the beautiful bees that buzz throughout Vrindavan, seeking out Krishna and the nectar of his pastimes. One very large Brahmara with a blackish blue complexion, barely able to lift its body and navigating with great difficulty, set off in search of Sri Krishna. Now let's see what happens with this bee. Wandering through groves, steaming with the scent of many flowers, he reached an area not distant from Barshana, the four-peaked home of King Vrishabhanu. In that place was a highly attractive kunja, decorated with flowers, vines, fruits, garlands, mirrors, pictures, and canopies. It was surrounded by tamal and kadamba trees, and was in the form of an 8-petaled lotus. All cognizant desire trees, covering the area with their shady foliage, bowed down with the weight of their ripe fruits, unripe fruits, sprouts, flowers, buds, and vines. Many parrots recited poetry about Sri Krishna's love-laden pastimes in response to the songs of the swans, cranes, and chakravakas. A solitary path leading through a bejeweled gate, trimmed and decorated by sylvan, those are the woodland goddesses, led to the interior of that splendid abode. Enchanted by this pleasure resort, that king of bees made his way down the path and into the shady sanctuary of the kunja. At that time, Sri Krishna and his beloved Radharani were sitting together on a golden seat, exchanging many wonderful riddles. Looking like the prince and princess of loving beauty, manifest in two separate forms, one golden and one blackish, Radhe Shyam sat together close, looking into each other's eyes, smiling. Shyam said, "What is alive, though dead, and lovingly enchants the three worlds, living in a body of 9 gates, like embodied living entities?" Turning her face, her lotus eyes fixed on his, Gauri said, "O Hari, it is your cricket flute which enjoys the nectar of your lips as its fee." Then, posing her own riddle, she said with a charming laugh, "Who is known as being very young, but also very old? Who is both bound and liberated? And who is the abode of darkness and duplicity, but is still very pure? Now you tell me." Shyam replied, it is I, Krishna. I become entangled in all kinds of pastimes, but remain the bestower of liberation for all. I am Shyam, the abode of darkness, full of duplicity and guile, but I remain Shuchi, for by chanting my name, the greatest saints achieve perfection. Perceiving those lustrous forms, the king of bees thought, "Now I have finally found the treasures of my life." In his wisdom, that Bringa saw the blackish prince as the source of loving mellows, and his golden Gopi as the embodiment of divine love. Unable to choose between his two desired objects, he flew into their midst, in their exchange of clever words. When that bumblebee entered between the divine couple, his humming echoed amidst their bodies and frightened Sri Radha. Turning her face and raising her left hand, Radhika fanned her anchal in an attempt to scare him away. Savoring their honey-like breath, that belligerent Brahmara continued to circle the area, feeling the greatest pleasure. When he began to hover near the lotus face of Sri Radha, she became distressed at his persistence. Expressing her alarm with the words, "Hi, hi!" Sri Radha arched like a golden bow, her hair hanging like a serpent, while Krishna sat bemused and insolent. So Sri Radha is upset, and Krishna does nothing. Then, the king of Brahmanas, the protector of religious principles, the most intimate friend of Braja's prince, Madhumangal, who had dozed at the entrance of the Kunja after consuming an immeasurable quantity of mangoes, came charging through the gate, brandishing a stick, his sika flying, his wrapper dragging on the ground. With clear Brahminical acumen, he immediately assessed the situation and called out, "Hey, rogue! How dare you attack the princess of Barshana in the presence of her guardian Sri Krishna and his minister of worldly fame, Madhumangal?" Charging forward with stick in hand, he slashed the air as if preparing to parry with a wild beast. Feeling the movement of the air, the strong vibrations of sound, and the disturbance in the ether, that bumblebee decided to retreat. Escaping in the direction from whence he had come, he buzzed out of the Kunja gate and enraged Bhatto close behind. The charming laughter of Sri Krishna echoed through the forest like a cascade of bliss as Sri Radha recovered from her fright and rose to behold her beloved. Panting in labor, with great beads of perspiration on his brow, his rotund belly heaving, Madhumangal returned from his mission with the words, "Madhusudan has gone." The sound, "Madhusudan has gone," entered Sri Radha's ears with devastating force, and assuming the form of a virulent poison, it immediately claimed her eyesight. While Bhatto had referred to the bee as Madhusudan, in her confusion Radhika took it to mean Sri Krishna. Looking in his direction, she saw only her reflection in his body, while his gentle laughter echoed as if taunting her from a distance. Dilating her eyes to see better, she searched everywhere for him, without whom her life was without meaning. In vain, Sri Radha saw only a baffled Madhumangal. Unable to see that her beloved was by her side, thinking he had left her alone, Sri Radha collapsed like a vine without support. Like a swan singing its death song, she echoed in a plaintive voice, "Madhusudan has gone! My Madhusudan has gone!" Crying uncontrollably, her delicate frame shaking, hot tears streaming from her lotus eyes, Radha exhibited the many symptoms of separation in union, known as Prema Mala. The overwhelming impact of Sri Radha's bhav caused the trees to shed their flowers, the vines to wilt, the birds to stop singing, and the stones to melt. While holding her in his arms, Sri Krishna sat speechless, wondering at her great exhibition of love. Feeling the intensity of emotion surging through her form, he became caught in her mood of separation, and his tears became a second torrential downpour. It is said that Madhumangal was at first unable to bring peace to the hearts of the divine couple. They remained devastated, drenched in their tears and absorbed in each other's love. After great effort, for what appeared a very long time, that knower of devotional science convinced Sri Radha. He convinced Sri Radha of Hari's presence and reversed the unhappy situation. So once again, Madhumangal saves the day. By that time, a small lake had formed from the mixed tears of Radha and Krishna, which even now is known as the Lake of Love, Prema Sarovar. That inquisitive bee, who was intoxicated by the honey of Brajabhav, who upon entering the grove had become more intoxicated by the honey of Yugalabhav, and who had fled the boundary of the Kunja, intoxicated once again by the honey of Radha Bhav, hastily returned to his bee associates. Composing himself in a grove of jasmine vines, he related the many events of that day to the great delight of his bee friends. In this verse, Shukadeva Goswami refers to Krishna by a name known among the communities of bees, men, and demigods. This name is Madhupati, the master of Madhu. And we see in a great song, the Madhurashtakam, Sri Krishna is celebrated over and over again as Madhupati. Madhura Dipate Rakilang Madhuram. And each time I've heard this beautiful song and that ending line, everything is sweet, about the emperor of sweetness, Madhupati, I remember this pastime of Prem Sarovar. And I remember that most fortunate bee who sees Madhupati as his very own master. The bees see Krishna as one of them, and they think their existence very fortunate, because they see that Krishna is dark like them, with a band of yellow, just like them. For his complexion is a dark bluish-black color, just like these bees. And his yellow band is none other than his yellow dhoti, which is shining like lightning. And so the bees consider him their most divine deity. And so they always think of Sri Krishna as one of them. They belong to his family. In this way, we can think about our own existence. What about us can remind us that we belong to Krishna, that we belong to Krishna's very own family? Whether it is the fact that we may be the very same shade of those fortunate desire trees of Vrindavan, or whether we have a name that has been given to us that helps us to remember our dearest friend. If we just take any opportunity, we can find something about us that reminds us that we belong to Krishna. We are his eternally, and we are part of his family. He is our most worshipful deity. So one of my friends is asking, I wonder if Krishna cried tears too when Radharani felt half conscious. The answer is yes. Krishna also cries another torrential downpour, it is described. Whenever Radharani is upset, it is said that Krishna also feels that same mood within his heart. Whenever she is feeling the pangs of separation, he too feels that same way. And how much can Krishna cry? It is said that Krishna is unlimited, and so Krishna cries unlimitedly. Not only is Krishna upset in separation from Srimati Radhika, but Krishna is also upset in separation from each one of us. Srila Prabhupada states that Krishna is even more eager to return us to him than we are to be returned to him. Krishna has been lamenting in our absence. So I remember these pastimes, and I think that when Krishna sees me, When Krishna sees you, when Krishna sees any of us, he does not see our bodies. He does not see our material conditioning. He does not even see all of the activities that we may have performed in so many lifetimes. Our Krishna, when he gazes at us, he sees the absolute identity of our souls. And he sees, here is my person who would perform service for me. When will my person come back? When will my friend, when will my beloved, when will my loved one just turn their face toward me once again? He doesn't even look at all of the horrible things that we might think we've done. He sees those memories of the service that we did that gave him the greatest pleasure. He sees, here is my person. They live to bring pleasure to my heart, but somehow they've forgotten. Let me help them. Let me help them remember. Let me remind them of our relationship. Don't you remember? We would gaze at one another. And we would be eager just to see a smile from one another. Don't you remember? Imagine, we all have constitutional positions that are deep within the service of Sri Krishna. Whether we are just meant to bring one flower to one gopi, who will give it to another, who will string it on a garland meant for Krishna, Krishna will know the origin of every single flower that is given to him. And so he misses you. No matter what our service was, whether it was big or small, Krishna knows the origin of it all. And he misses us. He misses his one person who would bring just that one flower. He misses that one person, that one soul, that one devotee who would grind the chandan just the way he needed it. The one person who would just bring the camphor. The one person who would just assist another gopi. He misses us all so much, more than we could ever imagine. Krishna's heart is so large. It has room for every living entity in creation. I hope and pray that when we see each other, we might be able to see also what Krishna sees. Maybe not all of the externals, but the potential for service. We can look at each other and see a soul whose actual identity is rooted in loving and belonging to Sri Govinda. So when we look at each other, we can see, this is my Govinda's friend. Here is Madhava's friend. And Madhava's friend lives just to serve him. This is how we can appreciate devotees. This is how we can appreciate anyone and everyone. This is how we can appreciate the purport of being humble like a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, offering all respects to others, not expecting any in return. And it is in this mind frame that we can, like the bees of Vrindavan, chant the holy name constantly. So thank you all for being with me. Thank you all for congregating and making a buzz, just like the bees of Vrindavan, by which maybe we can attract Sri Govinda into our midst. We can seek out the nectar of his form. We can seek out the nectar of his pastimes. And once we seek out his form and his pastimes and we chant his name, It won't be long until we are drawn in by the fragrance of his very body. That fragrance permeates all of Vrindavan. If we keep at it, if we continue with our devotional service together, with full faith, that beautiful fragrance will surely come to us. It is promised by our teachers and acharyas. All glories to autumn in Sri Vrindavan Dhama. All glories to autumn throughout the world, so that we can just have another excuse to remember our hero, our beloved friend, our master, Sri Govinda Dev. I'll see you all again soon tomorrow. Sri Vrindavan Dhama ki jai. Shri Krishna Chandra Bhagavan ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev ki jai. All glories to the bees of Vrindavan, the lakes of Vrindavan, the stones of Vrindavan. All glories to all of Shri Krishna's associates. And all glories to all of you, my devotional sanga, that brings me here night after night after night, so that I can somehow find some way to serve. Hare Krishna.